Okay, let's get started. Thank you for joining this webinar. My name is Matt Billock. I'm a developer advocate with Backand, and I'd like to walk you through how you can very quickly create a multi-platform Ionic and Angular app using Backand as your backend. Today's agenda will be based on 5 questions. We'll view Backand through the lens of these 5 questions and then look at what Backand can do, and then we'll be able to field any questions at the end of the presentation. Also, just as a reminder, if you have any questions, feel free to place them in the chat or to use the questions app, and I'll do my best to address everything at the conclusion of the webinar. So let's get started. Our first question, why Backend as a service? The primary reason that you use Backend as a service is to focus on what you do best. When you want to beautifully craft a front end, you want something that users are going to take joy in using, and Backend as a service allows you to focus on developing that kind of experience. Backend as a service provides a full server for your application. You don't need to do any installations. You don't need to do any server-side coding. You simply connect it up, and then you're ready to go. You can, for example, Angular web applications are well suited to the Backend as a service model. The two-way data binding helps with putting a REST API behind it, so you can very quickly abstract out your backend to whichever provider you desire. It's also great for mobile apps using Ionic, providing a shared data source on a singular experience across multiple platforms. Second question, why Backend? Well, Backend can do a lot of things that are necessary for web development. We provide a full server-side for your application, including server-side JavaScript execution, as well as hosting and a free database. You can store your files and images, and you can connect your users with social media or via organic signups. You can edit your data model automatically using JSON, and when those changes are saved, then we'll automatically create a database for you and generate a REST API around that database within minutes. As I mentioned before, you can run server-side JavaScript using custom actions. These can execute from database triggers such as onCreate, before delete, onInsert, or onUpdate, or it can execute on demand by hitting a specific URL, giving you true flexibility to run whatever custom functionality you need on your server. And then, as I mentioned, user management. You can either manage users directly through your app, controlling invites in the user registration process, or you can allow your user to sign up through one of the common social media apps such as GitHub, Facebook, or Google. We also offer extensive integration with third-party services. The list here is truly a subset of what's available. Anything that you can communicate with over HTTP and that needs to be done secure can be integrated with Backend. For example, you can build a payment system on Stripe with full support for PCI DSS standards. You can build a Mailgun clone or a Mailgun app that can perform transactional communications. You can integrate with Segment for tracking, with S3 for storage, and literally the sky is the limit. We also offer real-time functionality. If you want to create some sort of broadcast system, such as sending an event to all current users of your app, or even create something more interactive like a chat system, we offer that functionality. And we also offer hosting. With our hosting solution, we host all your application and code files, and you never have to worry about it. You simply go to backend.com/yourapp, and your app is available to run immediately. Next question. What works best with Backend? Backend was originally developed to support Angular, but really it's available for any JavaScript app or any app that can connect via URLs. But we provide SDKs for Angular, and we also have heavy integration with the Ionic framework. Something important to note for many developers with the recent change of Parse is that, with Parse going out of business, many are stuck looking for a new Backend as a service provider before the year expires next January, I believe. And Backend offers a very handy migration tool to migrate your Parse app into Backend, so you can continue moving. Just simply rewire your application to connect to your new Backend app, and all your data will be there. Your data structures will be the same, and you'll also have free access to your database. All right, so fourth question, can I make a real application with backend? I understand that some people view backend as a service, as a prototyping tool or something to be used during development, but when backend offers things like database storage, REST API, user management, hosting, file storage, really all sorts of functionality, it should be patently obvious that you can very easily create a real application with backend. All right, so how do I use it? How does backend work? I'm going to run through a very quick coding demo. So let's say, for example, that we want to create an app that allows students in a university to track their classes as well as track their homework available. So it's a very quick process to run through this. First, we need to go to the backend dashboard and we create a new application. By the way, if you're reviewing this, I highly recommend signing up for backend. Right now, we're doing a free forever account, but only if you register now, and that won't always be the case. So please sign up if you're interested and want to play around. Anyway, as I was saying, you create a new application in backend and open up the application dashboard. So from here, we can look at our data schema under the model tab. There are two ways to edit the model. The first is plain JSON. So it's a standardized representation of the data structure for your application. I can make an easy change here, such as calling this completed yet, and very quickly update your backend database. It'll present any warnings. For example, you may be destroying data by deleting a field. It just wants to let you know. Once the validation and update is completed, then your database is ready to go. We can go look at our objects directly, and we can see that we have our new completed yet field. We can add rows, delete rows, really do full-featured development through this dashboard. We also have a graphical interface for our data that we can explore. It allows you to very quickly discover relationships between objects, change them, add new fields, subtract new fields. So once we've created our backend application, we need to pull a couple of pieces of information. We go to security and auth, and we configure it for anonymous access. By default, backend apps are open for anonymous access. We recommend turning off anonymous access and requiring user registrations for destructive actions in your application, such as performing basic CRUD tasks. And then you can assign a read-only role to your anonymous users. But we won't go through that right now. Right now, what we're concerned with is this anonymous token, which is used by backend along with your app name in order to coordinate communications between coordinate communications between your app and backend. So let's look at some code. I have an example here that I've already built out. So let me check out the original branch. All right. So now we're on the skeleton app. For anybody who's interested, this is available at https://www.github.com/backend. This is a GitHub repo that we'll post again at the end of the presentation. It has a lot of code samples, and a lot of the material that I'm running through is present on there in some way or form. So we've checked out our application. We get diff master. So I've already pre-baked some of these changes into the application and put them on different branches. Right now, this is a change set that's necessary to switch to connect an application to backend. You simply set your app name, which is a one-to-one mapping with the name of the app in the backend dashboard, and then you set your anonymous token. Once you've done that, you can then check out the next step. In this step, we'll be adding a new data service. The original app was not very full featured. It was primarily for user management and tasks. We're adding the course structure now. So what we're doing at this point is creating a data service for the courses object. This all we simply do is we have two functions here that we use to get the URLs. These use the backend API to get the base URL and then simply append the object path to it. You can see right here, it's one object's courses. So that will then direct all calls to the service to the correct URL, and we can do any of the common HTTP actions. For example, if we want to do a list, we simply do an HTTP GET with the URL provided here. We can also use the same URL with a single object ID to fetch a specific object. All right. So once we have that up and running, we can then add in the controller and the view. So this is adding a controller for the courses, a standard Angular controller. We adjust the base route, and then we add the controller class. In our state provider, we specify the controller, we initialize the data in the resolve handler, and then in our course controller function, we perform the initial population. Finally, we use a basic template using a basic Angular repeat directive to cycle through our course list. And with that, we now have a functioning web app hooked up to a backend. Once I check out the code, that is. Oh. All right, you see we have 3 courses here, Math 101, Math 102, Math 103. If we look at our back end, Math 101, Math 102, Math 103. What's cool about this is I can now add a new course. Creates a new record here. I go back to my application, I refresh, and there's my new course. 0 server-side coding, simply writing the front end and then running with it. Obviously, this isn't a very attractive application, so let's use Bootstrap to make it a bit more visually appealing. Right. So if we look at the differences in this step, between this step and the step I'm about to show, it's really straightforward. This will add full CRUD functionality to our application. We add some basic methods to create, update, and delete courses to our controller. Then we update the template to use Bootstrap to present something that's much more visually appealing. So that's it. 2 file changes, and now if we refresh the page, well, if I restart the server, we see it's now much more attractive. We can delete courses and have those changes immediately reflected in the back end. We can add new courses. And we can edit existing courses. Now, if we go and take a look at our back end, see we have our new Social 103, we have Math 201, and we have a full CRUD app up and running. We're 15 minutes into the presentation. I just cannot get over how exciting this is for a developer who's looking to prototype quickly, or even someone who's looking to deploy a full production app with a backend they don't have to worry about. All right, so let's say that we want to add a new CRUD structure, subtask, a list of tasks for each course. Right now, we have tasks kind of hard-coded into our data model, but that's not very useful. I'm pretty sure I've had professors in the past that have assigned more than 2 tasks per course. So let's look at what we need to do to add a full task CRUD in front of that as well. So check out step 5. If step 4, step 5. All right, so we can see here we're adding a new service and a new controller to contact the new objects. Some minor formatting changes here on the courses controller, mostly because I had fat-fingered a few things when I was typing it the first time. So then we look at the template. We add a couple of new items to show the tasks, and then we add the task controller, which consists of the same as the state controller, just really the names are just changed from courses to tasks. And then we have the task template, once again, using Bootstrap to make it attractive. A modification of the course service to get the task list for a course. Really straightforward. We simply fetch the course ID. The course ID is tasks. What's going on here is really interesting because we've set up the data model to have a link between courses and tasks. We can take a look here. Courses has a collection of tasks, and backend automatically determines that based on foreign key relationships in your database and is automatically creating that in the backend. What this gives you is that if I access a URL for an object and throw the /tasks path at the end of it, it will pull in all of the associated tasks for the course. And while this isn't very obvious now, when I run through the demo, it'll be pretty interesting what's going on. So anyway, we move on to the task service, which again is fairly straightforward. You modify the URL to be objects tasks to fetch the tasks themselves. You then have all your basic create, update, and delete methods. And that's all the changes that are necessary. So if we serve this, we now see that we have a task button at the bottom of every course. Let's add some assignments, for example, to Sociology 103. Let's say we have to read chapter 1 by April 1st. Okay, so now we have a new task against our Sociology 103 course. Let's see what that looks like in backend. So if we go to our task table, we see we have our read chapter 1 task, and it's due on this is UTC, so it's due on April 1st, and it's marked for course 7. So if we go look at course 7, look, it's Sociology 1.3, just like expected. We've automatically created the foreign key relationship, and we've assigned the task the correct parent object, and now you have what is essentially a full-featured application. So we're going to go through another demo. This one is a little more technically interesting. This is a remote YouTube controller app, and this will leverage Ionic to show what can be done. So let me stop serving here. So we have two components to this: the controlling application, which I'll deploy on an iOS simulator, and we have the client application, which will actually display the videos. All right, so our client application is being hosted. So we bring up the app. We watch this very short but very interesting video.
Did you hear the beats, Mario, there? We'll go to the tape button. I'm going to the tape now.
So this video is a whole 19 seconds, but now that it's finished, we don't have anything else to see. Using backend's real-time database communication capability, we can play new videos within this app. Now it's very interesting. We can play the app, we can play the video, and we can switch videos, and we can wire up new events for the pause functionality to dynamically pause videos. Now let's take a look at exactly what's happening here. So what's happening is that when we push the play video button in the remote control app, it sends a request to backend to create a new object. In that object, we have an event attached to it that creates a socket broadcast to any registered event listeners, in this case, our client application. Let's take a look at what that takes to do in both the dashboard and code. So the first step that we need is to pull up the object model. We'll take a look at this table of video metadata. So what's going on here is that every time someone presses the play button, we add a new entry to this table. Right now we have 215. If I go back to the simulator, I hit play again, then we should see 216. Which we do. There's our new entry. Now, if we take a look at the Actions tab here, this is where you create custom actions. You can do them in any database transaction context or on demand. In this case, after creation of a record, we've added a JavaScript call that uses socket.io to emit a play video 3 event. Inside our application, our client application, we have a function that registers with backend to receive this play video 3, and when it receives that event, it then plays the video that's specified. So with that, we've created a very easy remote control app that, let me refresh the page here. We've created a very easy remote control app with, again, very little server-side coding. I think that's 2 lines of JavaScript on the server side, or on the backend side. Yep, 2 lines right there. And about 10 lines on the client side, or 5 lines on the client side, and we have a real-time application. As I was saying, we can very quickly look at objects. We can go to our video metadata. We can review the REST API that's automatically generated. Let's say we want to get video metadata. We want to get the first 20 entries. Just try it out. And here we go. Here are our first 20 video plays. We can do this with any object. And anytime we add a new object, it also builds a REST API. Let's test that. Let's test that now. Let's call this video data. Add object. And name. Add a text field, and we'll leave that as is. So right now we've created a new object, video metadata. We validate and update to record the changes. And you see we now have our new video data object, complete with a full REST API behind it. Okay. All right, so if anybody has any questions, I'm told the Q&A app is not functioning properly, but feel free to ask questions in the chat. I'm happy to go into more detail on anything. All right. Given that we still have about half an hour remaining, I'm going to run through a little bit more of backend's functionality, seeing as I've had some issues with the screen share, and I do apologize for that. We do have another webinar coming up on migrating from parse to backend that I promise will have better screen management. There's just been a couple of hiccups on this end. I apologize for that. So let's go back and look at the backend dashboard. And as I was discussing earlier, we can define security templates. This allows us to control the actions of a user across the entire app, and we can very quickly add a new role, call it editor. Let's say we want to give this new role the ability to read, create, and update. Now we can go look at our configuration, and we see that we have anonymous access assign roles. We can assign a new editor role, and this is available throughout the system. You can also specify this for your registering users. To set up registration, you simply enable the public app. You set a default role, and then you need to provide a few links to your registration pages. In the documentation for backend, there's lots of detail on exactly how to make this work for you. So we can take a look at our security offsetting. We see a large amount of documentation on every feature that's available, as well as some tutorials and scenarios on how exactly to use this functionality. Luke asked if we could go over the model diagram again, please. Absolutely. Let me share my screen first so I don't make the same mistake twice. All right, so if we go and we look back at our backend dashboard, All right, so let's take a look at our model. So there are two ways that we can work with the data model editor. The first is that we can edit JSON directly, and this JSON is a representation of a data model, of a SQL database. So for example, we take a look, we define an item, a new table named items, a new object named items. It has the type, it has the fields of name, which is a string, description, which is text, and then user, which is a collection of users. We can go take a look at what that looks like once it's been created. We see, if we look at our data here, we don't have anything at the moment. We can go look at our settings, and for each field in our objects, we can set each of the basic database properties. So as you can see, there's a one-to-one mapping between the JSON that we create and our objects themselves. The diagram is really a GUI on top of that functionality. It allows you to very quickly see visual relationships between your data. Let's say that we wanted to, for example, store video metadata on a per user basis. We can add a new item. We can call it video metadata, and we can create it as a collection. We can create as a collection of video metadata. We tell it what to use as a foreign key. Now we see that we now have a relationship between users and video metadata through the field user ID. We can then edit. We can trash this relationship. Perhaps it was a bad architectural decision. And while we will lose all the user IDs and video metadata, we no longer have the association. And all of this is available within seconds on, in backend. So if I make a change to my model JSON, to my model diagram or my model JSON here, it's immediately available to all developers on the app. Let's see what the other questions were. Sorry, wrong one. All right, so can you do a small tutorial on how to migrate from parse to backend? Sure, absolutely. And we do have a great video, or we'll have a great video on this subject as well, but let's walk through that here. So to migrate from parse to backend, you go back to the backend dashboard, and we have a very handy button up here. If you want to migrate your parse.com project backend, click here, provides a dialog. You create a new app name, short description. You can get the schema from parse. We have a small tutorial on how to do that. For example, you typically curl it from your existing parse app. Simply replace your parse app ID with your parse's app ID, and then provide your master key, and you'll get your schema, your data schema back as JSON. You paste that here. Let me close this window. Then you use the parse functionality from the parse dashboard to export your data. Provide the link to the S3 file that parse gives you an email after it's completed, and then click creates, and the new app will be created. I do not have a parse app ready to demonstrate, so I can't show the full functionality, but we do have another video and another demo that shows how this works. All right, let's see if there are any other questions. Let me refresh the page. Group chat doesn't seem available. I see. I apologize for that. Let me pull this up here. So group chat. All right. So I will post it here. So here is the back. I'm posting to the Google Plus page the basic backend GitHub account. As well as the course manager demo. All right, those are both present on the page now. So let's see. Ali asks if there will be a recording of this webinar available. Yes, once it's finished, it'll be published to YouTube, and we'll send out that link to attendees once it's ready. Cesar asks, would you mind briefly going over ways of accessing the DB directly, things like giving access to other users outside of the backend admin page? So I'm a bit unclear on exactly what you're asking here. If you're looking for ways to access the DB directly, I think I got it. So we can go look at our application. And I need to remember exactly where. So we look in the settings section of the dashboard. Let me make sure this is being presented. Yep. Go to database, and you see here your database endpoint on Amazon RDS, your username, and your password, as well as your database name. With all that information, you now have everything you need in order to access the database directly using whichever client you prefer. If you want to connect a PG admin to this or MySQL or something of this, you can very easily get the data out, assign new users, edit the data directly. And any direct edits that you make on the database should be reflected in the object model, and we'll rebuild the REST API based around those changes. All right, let's see if there are any other questions. Sergio asks if there was a limitation uploading JSON data inside a table. Itai, is there anything that you can speak to on that in terms of limitations?
All right. Right now, when you want to upload data using the JSON, you can actually see the syntax, and it's basically a flat array of the data in that specific object. You can only upload 1,000 at a time, and there is no way to do a deep upload. For that, you just need, if you want to do more deep upload, which means that multiple objects at the same time, for that you need to use the API. That's not possible through the JSON upload. Matt, if you can go to one of the application objects and click on the data tab, and then on this upload icon in the middle. Cool. And you can just show the JSON schema. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's kind of the syntax. You can see it's an array of objects, and that's the syntax that need to be uploaded.
Right. So you can very quickly format your data in this JSON and drag it here 1,000 records at a time. If you have a larger app, you'll need to do some. If you have a larger app you're migrating from parse, you'll need to do a little bit of bookkeeping to get the data in there, but it should be a pretty straightforward script. And we're always available to provide additional assistance if necessary, either through the support functionality on the website or via email directly.
Yeah, again, for parse, it's a different functionality done from the model over there. You can just, in one link from parse, we migrate the entire database. So this upload is only for kind of minor upload data. So.
All right. Let me check to see if there are any other questions. Okay, I'm not seeing any at the moment. I'm going to refresh a couple times. I'll stay on for another 5 minutes in case I see it.
Just want to ask about the accessing a database directly. That's available on a new app. So if you create a new app right now, you should have go ahead and create a new app.
All right, so we've created the new app.
And in just a second, it will be ready. It is.
Sorry, I jumped too quickly.
Yeah. Give a second. And then on the top, you should see a connect to the database. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Oops.
All right. Yeah, let me try creating a new app.
Yeah, and yeah, wait for a couple of seconds.
Yeah, that was totally my fat fingering. Has nothing to do with the functionality. Here we go.
Cool. All right, then click on connect your database. And that's where you actually have to connect your database green button. And over here, you can basically connect any of these types, MySQL, Postgres, or SQL Server. Oracle is only available for Enterprise Edition. And just provide your endpoints and username and password. Backend will discover the database, create object, and everything works exactly the same as everything we showed until now, but with your own database.
All right, looks like we have a couple more questions. Well, one more question. Larry says, I have an existing backend solution on a shared hosting service, data in MySQL and server-side PHP code. Can this solution be easily transferred to backend? The short answer is yes, with varying degrees of easy. If you can format, all you would need to do is, if you wanted to keep your code in PHP, is simply determine simply add the headers necessary to authenticate your application with backend, and then import your MySQL database, which you can import directly with all of your data. And then once you've done that, you're effectively ready to migrate your app. So it should just be a matter of changing the URLs to point at the new API for your object. Or if you don't have an API at the moment, it would be a matter of simply hooking your application's data service up to connect to the backend API that's automatically generated for you based on the database that you provide.
Yeah, and in addition about the PHP, it depends how much code you have in on PHP. If it's a simple CRUD, then you don't need to do anything. But if you have more logic, then please contact us, either to support@backend.com or using the intercom icon on the right lower of the screen, and we'll help you with your PHP code migration. So.
Okay. All right. Hopefully we've addressed all the questions thus far. Apologize if I haven't gone into sufficient detail on anything. There's a lot of product here and only so much time to show it. But I think it's important to reiterate that we very quickly went from a skeleton app to a fully functional CRUD app in less than a few hundred lines of code and with no server-side coding whatsoever. And that kind of power that kind of power is very useful to someone looking to either quickly prototype an idea or even to get a scalable, secure, and performant back end for an existing application so that you don't have to worry about it yourself. All right, as I mentioned, I will stay online a few more minutes in case there are any other questions that come in, but otherwise, thanks a lot for your time. It's been great presenting to you. Again, we apologize for the technical difficulties. Don't know why the Q&A app wasn't working. And of course, my failures to share the screen. Our next webinar will be on the parse migration, and we'll post information on that once it's available. Thank you very much.